Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, good morning everyone. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Sir, while
Today,
ending the class, I have few doubts. Okay, please don't end the class.
it's not
I
in my
actually
hands.
want to ask.
Yeah, it's not
Sir,
in my hands. It's university's host is
no,
concluding the
no,
session
you're
at the time
directly
of
ending
11
the
o'clock.
no, you're directly ending the class without asking anything. We have few
Yes.
doubts. We have to clear it, right? First of all,
Okay,
time is
just
very
to drop
less.
in the chat box, I will try to answer it.
In the chat, you want me to ask in the chat process or voice?
Then I will handle with both.
No, no, you want me to ask the question through chat or voice?
Chat.
Chat. Okay, please don't end up the session. Okay. I
Okay,
want to ask you the
at the time
question.
of 11 o'clock, they will conclude the session actually. So
Yes, when
it's
you
not in my
conclude, no,
hands.
please wait. Okay, please wait, sir. I'll be asking you questions. Okay.
Okay, no problem. Okay, shall I start the
Okay. Can you
session?
please once? Can you please tell me about? No, sir. Can you please once tell me about fraternity?
What happened?
Fraternity.
Fraternity.
Yes, yes. Yesterday you were telling about
Fraternity means
fraternity, no?
brotherhood,
What
like brotherhood only. In nature, brotherhood nature. Fraternity means.
brotherhood nature of between the nations, right?
Yes.
Okay. And where is the League of Nations located, sir?
League of Nations.
Yes.
Okay, I will answer in the chat box. I have to start
Okay.
the session. Sir is calling
Yes,
me.
yes. Sir,
Okay.
please answer in the last, no?
Okay, sure,
Because we'll
definitely.
be getting in the objective type also. That's the reason I'm
Okay.
asking.
Okay.
Fine,
Okay.
sir.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Today we are going to discuss about the Indian foreign policy, India's foreign policy towards the entire the world. Because after the getting independence from the Britishers, we have created our own constitution and implemented from the 1950. After that, we have made such a wonderful foreign policy towards other nations to develop our India in all variant different methods like in social, in economic and political. At the same time, in science and technology category, we have to develop ourselves by the implementing our foreign policy, because India occupies a very important position in the world, because it's a largest democracy and also seventh largest country in area wise, and the second largest populous country in the world, with many languages and many regional diversities are there. We are having many cultures, we are having many languages, but we are in oneness in nature like nationality. We are having only one constitution, we are implementing only one constitution, such a lengthiest and written constitution made by the our constitution framers. And also the India is now emerging as a superpower, because after both two world wars only we have observed that USA and USSR are the most powerful nations in the world after the 1950. But here now at present time, India like China, we are also emerging as a superpower in the world, because we are having such a all capabilities to make a superpower in the world. But we are not focusing on that, but we are having different ideologies. We are maintaining a non-alignment policy, not like USA and USR. They both are having different ideologies like capitalism and socialism, because they are fighting each other with their ideologies. But here we are not fighting like that. We are supporting many developing countries, like many poor countries. We are supporting them to protect against the two dominant nations in the world. So in that's why we are having a separate policies towards entire the world. Even if we are having neighbors like such a competitive nation like China. Also, we are having boundaries with them, and we are having many boundary disputes with our neighbors only. But in larger extent, we are not having any disputes between with the superpowers, because we are having support from the at the time of independence. We are getting support from the both superpowers, because we are also one of the founding member in the United Nations organizations, because we are in larger extent, we are also bonding with the objectives and aims of the United Nations organizations, because we are maintaining that principle, which is international peace and security. Even we also mentioned in our Indian Constitution under Article 51 also, we are bonding with UNO principle, international peace. We are maintaining international peace, because we are not starting at any time with any neighbor country with war. We are trying to conclude the dispute with a peaceful manner, peaceful debate or peaceful mediation. So some determinants are there in the making of the foreign policy, because we are having different kinds of geographical dimensions are there with our neighboring countries, because it's located in the very difficult in nature. We are having mountains, we are having rivers, we are having deserts, we are having with water borders with our neighboring states. So that's why we are having different strategic variations are there with our neighboring countries. So after the framing of our Indian foreign policy, some countries have commented like that it's a Nehruvian policy, but Nehru is one of the architect of Indian foreign policy, and he is also called as one of the main architect of the non-alignment movement, because they are maintaining a separate ideology. Hello? No, I'm not telling from the pages of your textbook. I'm not reading like that. I'm telling about the concept of the Indian foreign policy.
From which chapter?
Don't look like it's from contemporary political theories, or elective paper is there, na? Not.
Yeah. Okay.
So we are having separate traditions. Means we adopted many traditions from our colonial rulers, but we are maintaining our own traditions. That's why we are having a concept like that, unity in diversity, like in all variants. Like we have discussed about our cultures, we have discussed about our livelihood. Like that, we are having many languages, but we have recognized as Hindi as a main language for the national language for the implementation of our gadgets. Like that, we are oneness in nature. We are maintaining one citizenship. We are maintaining one constitution. Like that, we are having a separate Indian foreign policy, as well as we are maintaining non-alignment process in our foreign relations with other nations. So we are having different traditions in nature, like historical and political and economic and socio conditions. We are having different conditions in implementation of our policies. So like that, we are having many civilizations. We are having from the ancient time to present time. We are having many civilized categories are there. We are having many political traditions also there. Like before that, we are having, there is no constitution, but after getting implementation of the Constitution of India, we are having a democratic government. In practically, we are having, just a second. Hello, am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So we are having our Indian foreign policy as a separate from the both superpowers like USA and USSR. If we observe after both two world wars ended, there are many superpowers are there, like United States, France, United Kingdom, and the Soviet Union, and it's divided into several parts. So yeah, even China also one of the emerging superpower, but we are not focusing their ideology. We are not implementing their ideology towards our friendly nations. We have a separate own ideology. Like we have implementing a socialist democratic formula towards our policies and in our international relations also. So if we observe our foreign policy depended between our values, means our cultural values, our social values, our political values. We have been observed our values into the implemented into the our foreign policy. So there are several factors are influenced our foreign policy towards the development of the Indian nation into a faster growth in economy, because we have looted by the Britishers since colonial regime of Britain. We have almost 2 centuries they looted us in economy. They looted our natural resources like precious metals like gold and silver and diamonds, like that. We have been looted in many variants. Thinkers observed that if we develop, if we do not have support of the other countries, we cannot develop ourselves individually. So that's why we are wanted to get support from the our neighbor states, and also at the time we want support from the super blocks, which are emerging as a superpowers in nowadays. Before that, there are only two superpowers, because in United Nations organizations, around 2/3 nations are supporting us to become a superpower, like a permanent member in the executive body of United Nations. So in our Indian foreign policy, we are maintaining a non-alignment policy, because we are not a supporter of USA, we are not a supporter of USSR, because there is a competition between those two nations. We are not accepting their dominance among us. So over years, over decades, we are not accepting their intervention into our foreign policy, because they are trying to impose their ideology into our foreign policy, but we are not accepting their dominance over our nation, foreign policy, because our leaders doesn't accepted the dominance of the superpowers. So if we observe, some aims and objectives are there in our Indian foreign policy, because after the emerging of third world nations, we have discussed about the third world after getting independence from colonial rulers, that independent nations called as third world nations. So all the third world nations are following our non-alignment policy. If we observe our national concern over the other countries, we are telling them to maintain our own sovereignty. We should not encourage the others' influence in our foreign policy. So that's why all are the following our ideology into their foreign policy. So if we observe of our development of Indian economy for the purpose of in all categories of trade and commerce, because we are also members of some regional organizations like G15, SAARC. We are maintaining a trade and commerce treaties between our neighboring states, because there is no restrictions to implement the import and export policy. So there is no restrictions among the regional cooperation member states. So that's why we are emerging as a one of the superpower in the world. So we are maintaining a separate policies towards our foreign affairs. So if we observe, after independence, we are implementing our Constitution of India. We are having a separate external affairs ministry to maintain our international relations with other nations. So we have our own policies towards development of our international relations with all the nations in the world. If we observe some of revolutions also, we have influenced by the revolutions like French Revolution. We have already discussed French, German, and American Revolution and Bolshevik Revolutions are influenced to get independence from the colonial rules. These revolutions in entire history influenced many countries to get independence from their colonial rulers. So in nature, every nation wants to become an independent sovereign nation, to become an free state, because everyone wants to maintain international peace. No one wants to enter into the war, because UNO does not accept the war conditions of any two nations. Like that, many countries signed the goals and aims of the United Nations organizations. There are many discriminations also there in nature. There is no, if you observe, there is racial, already we have discussed in yesterday's class, apartheid system, race system between white and black in South Africa and also India. If we observe our India, there is a caste discrimination. This is the different from the other nations. Like that, there is we should not encourage racial discrimination, even gender discrimination also. We should not tolerate this kind of discrimination over our foreign policy. So we are supporting equality. We are supporting equal treatment for all the people who are living in the world. So we are bonding with the principles of the United Nations organizations. If we observe, the main future of our Indian foreign policy is the non-alignment process, because we are in nature, we are neutral between the two superpowers ideologies. So if we observe, our non-alignment policy is implementing and adopted by the entire 2/3 nations of the United Nations members. There are 193 members are there. Around 120 to 130 members are accepted and following our non-alignment process. If we observe, we are maintaining a peaceful nature, peaceful manner towards implementation of our foreign relations with our neighbors and also all the countries existing in the world, because we are having regional cooperation. We are having regional cooperation with our neighboring states. If we have some kinds of disputes like boundary disputes, water disputes, or other technical like military warfare disputes, but we are maintaining a peaceful relations with our neighboring states. And also we have implemented and we have signed a treaty between the China, like Panchashil in 1954. We have signed a treaty between India and China. In that Panchashil, there are 5 principles are there, because even that 5 principles are influenced and implementing by our foreign policy. If we observe, there are 5 principles like number 1, mutual respect to each others, even in territorial integrity or sovereignty. We should not encourage to enter into the both countries' foreign policies or both countries' political and democratic environment. So we should not encourage the intervention between the both nations. Like we should not encourage any nation. We should not encourage any country to enter into the other country's policy system. And also we are supporting non-aggression, because we should not encourage any dominance over the poor countries. We should not encourage superpowers dominance over the third world nations. And also non-interference of the internal. Already we have discussed. We should not encourage anyone interference into the others' internal affairs, and equality and mutual benefit. In our foreign policy also, we are maintaining equality among the all people who are living in the nations, and also peaceful coexistence. We are bonding with the principles, and also these 5 principles are placed in our Indian foreign policy. If we observe, we are also an supporter of anti-colonialism and anti-imperialism, because we have mentioned in our foreign policy, and we have fought against the colonial rulers from the beginning of the both world wars. So India doesn't support the colonialism. That's why we are got independence from the Britishers after the various struggles are made by our national leaders. So we should not encourage imperialistic ideology over the developing nations or colonies. We have already discussed. There is a imperialist ideology imposed by the colonial rulers into their dependent nations. So our foreign policy also a supporter of anti-colonialism and anti-imperialist ideology of the nations. So, and also we are opposed racial discrimination. We are having faith on United Nations objectives and goals and aims, and at the time we have signed with the United Nations organizations, and also we are having many agreements between the neighboring states, and also we are having bilateral relations between many emerging superpowers like Britain, China, and France, Italy. Like that, we are having bilateral relationship in the trade, in commerce, and technology support, technical support. Like that, we are having many relations with the other nations, and some kinds of activities also we are conducting. We are fighting against the terrorism. We are not supporting the terrorist activities entire the country, and also we should not support in any terrorist activity in entire the world. And also we are bonding with the United Nations organizations in the disarmament, because UNO wanted to maintain a peaceful world. To maintain a peaceful world, it is ordered, it is suggested to the all the members of its organizations to reduce the weapons, to reduce the nuclear weapons, and also to reduce the military forces. In the process of disarmament, everyone wanted to sign the treaties which is created by the United Nations organizations. In some treaties, the 2 superpowers which are emerged after the both world wars, the USA and USSR, sometimes in some treaties they have not signed the treaties because they have already nuclear power. Because we have observed in 1945 they bombed in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, which is placed in Japan. They have used their nuclear power. After they becoming nuclear powers, they wanted to all the nations to should not have this nuclear power, but they are having already. But the nations which are having earlier in the post wars, they wanted to having only with them only. They do not share their technology with other nations. So India, in these situations, we are also brought technical support from Soviet, and we are also one of the nuclear power in the world. In nowadays, we are also ready to participate in the war, but we are bonding with the UN principles, so we are against to the war. So that's why we are not entertaining our military forces to participate in the war. If there is a situation to participate in the war, we are trying to maintain, we are trying to resolve that issue with in peaceful manner or with the support of United Nations organizations. We are wanted to uh, conclude that dispute between the our neighboring states, like we are having neighboring states like Pakistan. We are also having neighboring with Bangladesh. We are having wars between these two states only. We are having wars with uh, Pakistan, at the same time Bangladesh. We are not having wars with any other states. If we observe our after the uh, uh, world wars, we have faced a different situation in the world. That's what we are calling as Cold War. We have already little bit introduction has been over about the Cold War. Cold War means there is a war between ideological basis between the superpowers, and it is also considered as a geopolitical tension between the world, because the two superpowers, which are USA and USSR, are become the superpowers. The Second World War, after the Second World War, they wanted to become a superpower in the world. They wanted to rule the entire world by the one nation. So this cruel ideology has been imposed by the both nations. Even USA wanted to become a independent superpower in the world. USSR also wanted to become an independent superpower in the world. That's what they supported. Nations are uh, uh, forcibly implemented their imperialistic ideology into their colonies. So that's the reason, due to distrust between the superpowers. There is no trust between the superpowers because they are signed in the UNO, but they are maintaining their separate ideologies. They are maintaining their separate, increasing their military support and increasing their weapons in secretly. So that's why the both nations are forcing the other nations to get the power entire the world. If we observe the development of the Cold War, many conferences made by the United Nations and many conferences made by the USSR and USA, the main developments are about the Cold War. It lead to establishment of United Nations organizations, because after the World War, we have already discussed about League of Nations in the during the period of 1920 to 1939. It is a failed situation after the starting of the Second World War, and also there wanted a free elections were to be conducted for the entire the European continent, because after the colonial rulers, everyone wants to become a free. Everyone wants to become free from their colonial rulers. Like that, there is a free, fair elections are there in all the third world nations. So like that, we have observed many states after the both world wars got independence from their dependent and colonial rulers. If we observe, there are separate developments are there in the ideology basis. Even there is no agreements between the nations after the World War II. Everyone is eagerly waiting to reshape their nations, because they lost everything in the World War II, like Germany, like Japan. Everyone wants to reshape their nations in geographically, in economically, in technically. They wanted to redesign their nations after the World War II. That's why they are differentiated with these two blocks, means US and USSR. They adopted our non-alignment movement process into their foreign policy. That's what we are supporting every nations in shaping of their country into the regenerative mode. If we observe, there are separate ideologies also there by their dictators. Even the dictators like Stalin, like Napoleon, like Hitler, they have influenced their entire nations with their ideology. They dictating their people to participate the war to recovery of their properties. Like last territorial areas like that. Even there are some different doctrines also there after the establishment of the nuclear UNO. There are separate doctrines are there made by the United Nations organizations. If we observe USA and USSR, they wanted to become a separate superpower in the world. So that's why they became a separate ideology, and they forcefully wanted to, just a second. There is a little disturbance from seller outside. Leave about the other sounds in our class. So if we observe, both nations wanted to influence our not only our all the dependent nations. Everyone wants to independent from their two cruel ideologies. That's why we are maintaining a separate ideology with our nation. So with our foreign policy, we are maintaining, we are following and adopted many different ideologies among the world, because we are bonding with the United Nations organizations, and also we are having relations between all the nations. So if we observe, our foreign policy makers are, and our constitution framers also wanted to become India as a independent and sovereign nations towards the entire the world. Everyone wanted to adopt our ideologies. Like that, we have collected many things from other states and placed in our constitution, and also placed in our foreign policy system, because there is many trusteeship between the our neighboring states and also other states in the world. And also we have to know the one of the major principle in our international syllabus, that is collective security. Collective security is one of the important theory in our international relations. If we observe, collective security means it's a concept. It's a concept is commonly regarded as a most effective method in maintaining peace and deterring aggressions, because UNO adopted this collective security concept to maintain the international peace over the member states, because collective security was supposed not only by the basis of the League of Nations or UNO, it is the basis of United Nations organization's aim, which is to maintain your world into the peace. So that's why the system of collective security is the main concern of the United Nations organizations. So the word security represents the goal, while the word collective indicates the nature of the combined strength with all the to face the aggression, because we are against to the aggression of the superpowers into the all the other nations. So according to Hans J. Marganto, he mentioned that collective security means every nation stands for the all the nations in the world. He stated that one for all for one is the watchword of collective security. Means every nation stands for the support of all the nations in the world. Everyone stand for the support of all the nations in the world. We should not accept others' ideology, but we should respect the idea, their sovereignty. As per this principle, we have to support all the nations in the world in one nature. So our collective security principle, we are also respecting that principle, and this principle is placed our foreign policy also, because if we observe, there are separate conditions are there to maintain this collective security. If we observe, the basic requirement of collective security is that the should function impartiality, because every nation wants to become independent, and every nation wants to support all the nations without any discriminations, because they are having their own ideologies, but we should accept their ideology in equality manner. The collective security principle must function impartially. They should not have a partial mentality or partial treatment with other states. If collective security is to operate impartially, government or people must exhibit flexibility of policy and sentiments, because if we observe our policy makers also, they are not having partiality with their relatives or with their supporters or their party members. They are implementing the policy towards the entire state without any discrimination. So like that, the collective security is to muster at all the time such overwhelming strength against the potential aggressor, that the latter should not repeat the aggression. If you observe it, in any situation, the collective security is there for the maintain of the to oppose the aggression over this developing or poor nations in the world. And also the nations must be willing to subordinate their political differences of the service of the world community by wholeheartedly supporting collective action against the aggressor, because no one want to support the situation in the world in present times also. Collective security must not be directed against any specific states or group of states or any regional organization in case of any aggression over the any state in the world. So collective security system necessitates the willingness of nations to fight for the status quo. Collective security does not accept a forcible change in the international order, because we are having an international law established by the United Nations organizations. Everyone should accept the international law in making and in implementing the international peacemaking process towards the world. So if you observe, there are some objectives are there in collective security concept. It aims at the prevention of peace. It prevention of violence, means it is aims to preservation of the peace by the collectivization of the force, because UNO stands for this principle to maintain the international peace. It is also against the principle of violence. It should not encourage the war in nature. It is encourages to resolve the disputes with the discussion or debate or arbitration or mediation, like that. Every nation stands for this principle. So it focuses upon the ideals of world government and international cooperation. If we stand for these principles, every nation wants to be cooperate each other. Every nation wants to support each other. It is also aims at mutual cooperation between two or more states or entire the world nations, because in common nature, if we observe, every nations are depending upon other states in various categories, like technology sharing, like trade and commerce, import and exports. Everyone is depending upon other nations, because every nation is not having all the resources for their nation. So each nation is depending upon other nations. So if we observe, we are not having much sources of petroleum products. We are importing petroleum products from the Arab countries. We are depending upon Saudi Arabian countries in the import of petroleum products. Like that, many countries, we are exporting something, we are importing something. Like that, every nation is depending upon the other countries in the process of their development. If we observe, at the time of League of Nations, the collective security, the concept is first effort in the enforcement of the League of Nations. After the establishment of the United Nations organizations, it is the mandate for the all the members of the United Nations organizations. If we observe, they have mentioned in the UN Charter to peacemaking process, they have mentioned this principle into the UN Charter, because the UNO has been participated many meetings to reduce the wars, to maintain the world into the peace manner, because there are many settlements has been made by the United Nations in the name of collective security, because there are some kinds of methods are there for the peaceful settlement of disputes, because United Charter follows many ideas, many peaceful methods like negotiation, mediation, and inquiry, conciliation, and arbitration. Some types of judicial settlements also there. We will learn about these things in future classes. In your postgraduate studies, you can learn about these things, because they in our syllabus we have to know about this in little bit only. So if we observe about disarmament also we have discussed already. Everyone wants to stand for the disarmament. Literally, everyone wants to reduce their weapons to maintain the peace. Everyone wants to reduce their military forces to maintain the peace over the world, because UN stands for the maintenance of the international peace and security. So that's why the need for disarmament is mandatory for the all the member states, because there is a nuclear threat is there over the world. If we observe, there are many countries are having nuclear power to protect their country. If they use the nuclear power, we might expect there is no one would be live among the world. So if we observe, even Japan, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, there is even no grass at the where bombed nuclear by the American state. So if we observe, many types of agreements are made by the international organizations like UNO. There are several regional organizations also there, like European Union, Asian, SAARC, some types of group of countries also there, like G5, G7, G15, and G20 groups. Are a group of nations has made a group to develop themselves by the mutual cooperations, because every group is created for their regional cooperation. Every group is created for the equal development in the name of trade and social integration and political support. Political support means they are trying to share technology basis only, not interference of their politics, but they are encouraging to implement different methods in the process of politics. Because if we observe, there are different kinds of democratic methods are there in the world. So we are applying some kinds of democratic methods. So if we observe, there are direct to democracy system is there. There is a indirect democratic system is there. So we are maintaining these principles in time to time. If we need, we will apply that methods into our politics. If we observe, there are many customs are there, many laws are there to implement the these international principles over the our Indian foreign policy. So we have developed our foreign policy with the support of ideas made by the United Nations organizations, as well as many countries has influenced our foreign policy systems to maintain relationship within peaceful manner with the our external states, because there are many countries are supporting, many are opposing our ideologies towards the making of the international peace, to maintain international peace, because we are having good relationship with all the countries in the world, not only neighbors, not only superpowers. We are because we are the founding member of United Organizations in the peacemaking process. We are having morals. We are maintaining objectives of the United Nations organizations to maintain the international peace, in order to maintain the security, in order to maintain collective security in the world, because we are supposed to maintain the collective security process in the world to maintain the international peace. We have to about the one thing, there are power blocks are there, like to maintain the disarmament principles. There are military alliances are there in the time of 1945 to 1960. There are CETO, there are NATO is there, North Atlantic Treaty Organizations, like that. Many defense treaties are there, many military organizations are there to to reduce their weapons. So in that organizations, in that military alliances, we are not part of that, but we are bonding with the principle of disarmament by the made by the United Nations organizations. And also we have to know about unipolar states, bipolar states, and multipolar states in the world, because polarity in our international relations, it is a description of the distribution of power. Means unipolar means a single nation wants to dominate over the world. Bipolarity means two nations. Like if we observe, USA, USSR is the best example for the bipolar states in the world. And multipolarity means every nation, more than two nations, are wanted to get superpower in the world. In modern international system, there are three types of these powers are there. If we observe, bipolarity is the major thing in the international relations, as per the according to Hans J. Margando, the race of crossing one another to superpowers to involved in power struggle. Already he wrote a book about power politics among nations for the struggling for the power, because international relations is always telling about the struggling for the acquisition of power, because international relations are like power politics only. So bipolarity can be defined as system of world order into which majority of global economic, military, and cultural influence in held between two states. So in case there are some kinds of events are led to the maintain the bipolarity in the time of between the time of both world wars. So two blocks developed around the Soviet Union and Soviet states, with other countries being forced to choose these two blocks ideologies. Later, that only after the Second World War, after the implementation of non-alignment policy, every nation wants to become neutral into the these two power blocks. So that's why every nation wants to be independent from the two power blocks. If we observe bipolarity, the war between the two power blocks means USSR and USA. These two power blocks are not directly participating into the wars. They are forcing to their supporters. They are forcing to their colonial partners who are under them. They wanted to participate war with like a proxy method, means they not directly participating in the war. So that's why the ideological basis were called as Cold War. There are some advantages also there by this concept of bipolarity. weaker states tend to participate in institutional arrangements and dominated by one or the other of the major players, because they lost everything in the world wars. So they wanted to become again an independent state in the world. So they are they are need of support of these two power blocks. So there are many disadvantages are there, because the bipolarity, the concept which is based on a constant tension that leads to competition, because these two power blocks are leading actors in the international relations to get the power into one hand, because individually USA and USSR wanted to become an independent superpower in the world. So that's what the reason is behind this concept. The two power blocks are maintaining this inner ideology based system towards the world. If you observe about unipolarity means one nation wants to lead the other states. Like individually, these two power blocks also wanted this thing, but this thing is not successfully maintained by the both states, because after 1990 there is a collapse of Soviet Union into different states. The balance of power competition has made a major incident in the world political system. The transition from bipolarity to unipolarity arguably represented a dramatic power shift in favor of the United States, because if United Soviet Union is there, it's a powerful nation. After the division of United Soviet, like collapse of Soviet Union, so United States has become only one superpower, and the international system has become unipolar after the 1990. So later that many countries are emerged as superpowers. We have already discussed, like Britain, France, China, even India also wanted to become one of the superpower in the world. And also there is a concept named multipolarity. Multipolarity means it's a distribution of power in which more than two nation states have nearly equal amounts of military, cultural, economic influence. In compared to bipolar system, the multipolarity system is different and more complicated with many centers of power. But it's in nature, it's a flexible conditions are there to maintain the multipolar system, because multipolarity means only an indication that the current process of globalization, all the states are wanted to become superpower in the world. In case there are differences are there between aligned states, non-aligned states are there, but there is a system includes a number of majority states. Typically at least 5 are roughly equal power or capability, because 5 only they're now permanent members in the United Nations. We are also wanted to become the permanent member in the Security Council, but that 5 members are not accepting our willing to become a member in the permanent Security Council, because these things are which is made by the major powers in the world. This multipolarity entails that margin of states to act unilaterally is decreased. There are many advantages are there by this multipolar world, because there are many organizations are established after the Cold War, after the 1990. There are many NGOs are there, many social movements are raised by the many countries, and many separate citizens groups are there to protect the human rights. Organizations are there, many network communities are there to cooperate between the democratic nations. In multiple systems are there. There is many numerous interactions are take place among all the various parts of the all the nations in the world. There are many disadvantages also there with the multipolar world. The presence of nuclear weapons is a source of instability because the having nuclear power is the main disadvantages for this competitive system in the world. So that's why United Nations organizations wanted to reduce the uh, weapons respectively to maintain the principle of disarmament, because everyone stood stand for the principle of collective security. Everyone stands for the principle of disarmament to maintain the international peace and security towards the peaceful world. In the globalization process, every nation wants to become superpower in the world, but every nation should stands for the purpose of maintenance of international peace in the order of United Nations organization. So this is the concept which we have discussed about international foreign policy towards the uh, world. If you have any queries, you can clarify with me in this concept. If there are no doubts, I will conclude the session.
Sir,
Tell me.
sir, is this contemporary international relations, sir?
Hmm.
Sir, we are not completed in previous lessons only, sir.
Yes, yes. Already we have only 6 classes to complete both two papers. I
Okay,
have
sir.
received. That's why I have completing important topics towards your examination purpose.
Okay, sir. Okay. If we
Okay.
have any doubts in previous lessons, we can ask, sir.
So please
Sure.
give important questions.
Okay. I will drop my number in the chat. You can directly ask with me, because there is a lack of time.
Sir, when are you giving important questions, sir?
Next class I will try to give you.
Because tomorrow is the last class now, sir. So that's the
Yes,
reason.
yes. I will try to give you important questions for the entire both papers.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Please drop the number so we can ask the doubts.
Okay, I'm trying to drop, but your network is slow. It's rotating.
Yeah.